294 days behind bars for Brittney Griner, and today she is free, following a high-stakes prisoner swap brokered between the Biden administration and Moscow. But in exchange for the American basketball star's freedom, a notorious Russian arms dealer, who they call the Merchant of Death, convicted here on terror charges and conspiracy to kill Americans, is also going free. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Campagno. Also joining us today, Dr. Nicole Saphier, Kellyanne Conway is here, and Joe Concha. Woo-hoo, it's going to be a good one. So look, there is celebrating today because Brittney Griner is home from a Russian prison colony, a penal colony that is notorious around the world. She had been in custody for months on drug charges. The WNBA star's ordeal began in February, just days before the Ukraine invasion, and she was detained at a Russian airport. Custom agents claimed they found vape canisters and cannabis oil inside her luggage. She later pleaded guilty to it all, but said she had no criminal intent. Griner was swapped for the man I mentioned, Victor Bout, better known as the Merchant of Death, for fueling civil wars around the world. He was convicted in 2011 of conspiracy to kill Americans and selling hundreds of missiles to terrorists, sentenced to 25 years in prison. President Biden brushed over those facts in his remarks on the exchange earlier today, instead focusing on what we all are happy about. Griner is coming home.
With Brittney Griner. She's safe. She's on a plane. She's on her way home. After months of being unjustly detained in Russia, held under intolerable circumstances. Brittney will soon be back in the arms of her loved ones, and she should have been there all along. This is a day we've worked toward for a long time. We never stopped pushing for her release. It took painstaking and intense negotiations, and I want to thank all the hard-working public servants across my administration who worked tirelessly to secure her release.
An American coming home. Kellyanne, you were with an administration that brought some folks home.
50 detainees and hostages. We honored some of them at the Republican National Convention. They told their stories. They thanked President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary of State Pompeo, and many others for having the courage and the persistence of not giving up on them. They were the forgotten men and forgotten women abroad. That was Turkey, Venezuela, North Korea, China, Iran. This is a great day for America. I'm glad Brittney Griner is coming home to our country, and that I think she paid her dues there in terms of breaking their laws. It was an undue, unjust punishment. And I'm very disappointed for Paul Whelan and his family, though. I think this is very cruel to them. It looked like he was part of the negotiation process. CNN has a story today where he tells them in exclusive he's disappointed. He was convinced he was going to be part of this. The deal, of course, is lopsided. But it's good to see Kamala Harris. I'd kind of forgotten about her. Good to see her popping in there today.
Oh, yeah.
But seriously speaking, I hope the Biden administration keeps focusing on this because it's incredibly important. It's not something that they seem very, very focused on, Harris, in terms of having it as a major priority. But I also think it just shows Russia right now, a Russia in retreat in many ways. I mean, Vladimir Zelensky he's Times Person of the Year and deserves it. And you see you see Ukraine really doing very well in that contest. So I just think it's a great day for America. I don't want to second guess the rest of it because I'm glad she's on a plane on the way here.
Yeah, I mean, that's where
I've met with these detainees.
The good news is
there's really nothing like it. To have a commander-in-chief and a president and administration who focuses on that, I'm not going to say that's the Biden administration yet. They're nowhere near the 50 that the Trump-Pence administration logged in 4 short years. But this is really good.
So let's talk about the legalities of what got Brittney Griner where she was. You talked about the lopsidedness of what she had done potentially with cannabis oil and so on and so forth, and then what happened to her. A penal colony that is known around the world for things like sex assaults. And I mean, it's a horrible place in Russia, and that's where she had most recently ended up.
That's right. I think part of what shocked Americans was the disproportionate nature of that punishment, obviously, the severity of what, frankly, is a labor camp. It is absolutely atrocious conditions. No human should ever be subject to something like that. Yet another reason why we love being Americans, because our incarceration system, while disproportionate as well and cruel in some ways, we are nothing like that. Nor is that on the books for us. But that is typical Russian. That's the problem. When you go in and you know that's against the law, they're actually quite clear with the disproportionate nature of their punishments. And I have a few thoughts just as an American here. I'm so grateful for both of your articulation of sort of the tempered nature. We are so joyful. We're so grateful for Brittney Griner's release, and yet at the same time, there are some elements about the global nature of it
that
sort of are difficult to swallow. We exchanged, in my opinion, we exchanged the merchant of death for an NBA player while leaving a former Marine behind, whose motto is, "We will never leave one of you behind," in service for this country, because we were too weak to insist on that, because it was part of the original negotiation, for an infraction that this administration incarcerates people by the millions for, most of them Black, by the way.
Well, not anymore, because the laws are changing. So the irony there is that what you just said existed not even 6 months ago.
That's
Right. And can I just say as well, what a message of priorities for this administration and abandonment. But I'm not surprised at the abandonment, because we learned from that Afghanistan pullout. And when I heard President Biden saying, she's safe, she's on a plane, she's on her way home, I was brought to tears, because that is something he could not say to the 13 service members who were left behind in Afghanistan, who sacrificed their lives during the Afghanistan pullout.
Who are still in that country.
That is absolutely right. And I just, when he talked about the tireless nature of those that secured this release, undoubtedly, and I'm so grateful for their service. What about the hundreds, maybe thousands of people who secured the conviction of the merchant of death, who risked their lives to put him behind bars? What a slap in the face. What a message, again, of priorities and of abandonment.
I'm so glad you said that. You know what the operation was called? Relentless.
Relentless. I saw that.
I mean, when you call something Operation Relentless, Dr. Sapphire, I mean, that tells you everything about the treasure and the human sacrifice that was put forth to capture this man. And Kellyanne, I love the way you put it, and you're absolutely spot on when you say we can't second guess each deal. You saw 50 of them. But what we can do is investigate to see if we could have got more, since Russia, as you pointed out, is in a rather capitulated position right now around the world. Doctor?
Well, that's right. And so I'm so glad that she is coming home. She was arrested for less than a gram of cannabis oil. It's less than a gram, that's less than the weight of a pen. And cannabis oil can be used medicinally to treat chronic pain.
She's
an athlete. I assume that's why she was using it. But that being said, it does seem that this was an opportunity for Russia, because they saw this. They saw her, they had this cannabis oil, and they said, we're going to arrest her, we're going to detain her, and now we're going to start using her as a negotiation tactic. It was a lopsided trade, in my opinion, but I am very happy she's coming home. But not only have some people been left behind, there's been a teacher who's also been left behind. And of course, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he has been a teacher for the last 10 years teaching at the diplomatic schools in Russia. And he was also arrested for medicinal marijuana, but he has not even been anywhere in this conversation. So my concern is this is a little bit of a political stunt by the Biden administration, because Griner is so well known and she is connected with so many communities. And I think that there are just some people being left behind.
Oh, it's so hard to talk like that, isn't it? Right?
Well,
we don't talk about the things
Mark
that are
Fogel,
the things, because people cancel so often. And it's okay for all of those categories, Black, female, LGBT, it's okay for all of those categories to be part of the story here. It's a beautiful part of the story. But the other beautiful part of the story is American. And we do have at least one more. You mentioned the teacher, Paul Whelan, the military veteran. Look, I don't know if we have the equivalency. That's what I've been investigating all morning. So who we have in custody now, I would ask Joe, do we have the equivalency to a Victor Boot, to a merchant of death who took weapons from the battlefield left behind at the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 and unleashed them for money all over the world in places like Sierra Leone? And sold them to the Taliban even, probably killing some of our guys.
Harris, we may have used our biggest card here. And when you have that big card, you have to make sure you get back something that is somewhat equivalent. So now the questions are,
Well, her life, Brittney Griner's, is so important. I get it.
So is Paul Whelan.
But could we have done more will always be the question.
That should have been the negotiation. We're the superpower. We're the ones with the leverage. We should have said Paul Whelan, Brittney Griner, or no deal, because the questions have to be asked now. At what cost did we do this? Because what kind of precedent does this set? You know that hostage taking is going to be happening now more against U.S. citizens and wrongful imprisonment, because now our adversaries will see an opportunity, a sign of weakness, just like the Taliban did when they negotiated to handle security in Kabul at that airport that got 13 service members killed. There's a pattern within this administration, and they bended too quickly on this one. They should have demanded Paul Whelan or no deal at all.
That's really, Michael Waltz, congressman from Florida, was echoing what you were saying that our enemies across the world are going to look at this and they're going to see, should we take more Americans?
Indeed. In the meantime, let's celebrate for Brittney Griner's family, who had been through hell over all these months.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.